Ancestry.com, etc. But your book really gives a wonderful overview of all the different things that you can look at. Welcome.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm glad to be here and have the opportunity to talk about my book and my passion of genealogy.
Now, I didn't mention the title because I thought it would be better coming from you. The title of the book is?
Who's Your Daddy?
That says, Who's Your Patty? Who's Your Daddy? What a great title for a book on genealogy. How'd you come up with that?
Well, I got the book written and had my proposal and tried to shop it around to a couple of agents and editors. And the title at that time was How to Find Your Family's Place in History. And they would ask, now what's the title? And I'd say that, and they'd say, that's pretty long. I don't know, I'll have to think about it. So I decided I needed to change the title. And when I was talking to the publisher, Dan Case, he was interested in the book because he said he'd never seen a book with this kind of information and thought there was a really good market for it. And he said, so what's your title? And it just popped into my head. Who's Your Daddy? And he said, I want it. How soon can I have the manuscript?
How wonderful. And how, is this your first book?
It's my first book I've completed. I've got quite a few half written that I hope I will just magically write themselves now that I finally got this one done.
How wonderful. And so you said obviously that you've done a lot of research.
Yes. When people ask me how long it took me to write that book, I say, only about 30 years, because that's how long I have been researching. And I always wished there was a book like this available when I was trying to find things. And then I decided, why not write it? It'll help me to remember what I need to look at, and then maybe it'll help somebody else too.
It is a really good book. It's very comprehensive. There's a lot in it. Will you touch on some of the main things that you wanted to be sure and include? Well,
I liked the idea of having examples, anecdotes, because people, many genealogy books are just books of begats. So-and-so was born, married, died, had these children, and that's all there is to it. Well, I wanted to know about their lives, how they overcame the troubles in their life, and how, so we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. Okay, if grandmother made it through that, I should be able to too. So that was one of my main goals, was to make it interesting so that people could gain some experience and some perspective on their own lives, and then to see how their ancestors lived through those times. I mean, some people think we're having terrible times right now because of the economic crisis. It's nothing compared to what our great-grandparents went through and those at the time of the founding of this country. Just finding enough food to eat was really something.
I know I never gave a hoot about history until I started doing genealogy, and suddenly everything mattered. Why did they do that? Could be because there was a war, there was a breakout of disease. So it really, you said something in here, it really puts the meat on the bones to have more information in the anecdotes. So I so appreciated it. You've explained what the censuses are. You explain the different types of photographs and how to identify things. What gave you the idea to go ahead and include that?
Well, as the only granddaughter on both sides, the only daughter in our family, I wound up with the trunk full of pictures that had no names or dates or anything to identify them. And I couldn't stand to get rid of them. I still don't know how people put their family photos on eBay, but I found some good ones on eBay that I've gotten. And so anyway, going through this trunk of pictures and trying to identify who these people were and how they fit in my family, I discovered some things that were very helpful in doing that. So that's how I got interested in that part.
I'm glad that you included that. And then as far as the censuses go, when people start to do their genealogy, they, like you say, you work backwards, but the censuses aren't available for 1970, 1960, 19. It wasn't only until recently that the 1930s have become available. But you explain from the time that they began, 1790?
Yes, and there are tax records before 1790 that you can consult before that. But the census are so important, and this is really relevant to what's going on right now as we're getting ready to have the 2010 census. And some people are very reluctant to give out that information, but their descendants will be very grateful that they did. It's amazing the things you can learn. Of course, you have a 10-year gap each time, and you're going to lose some family members through death or through marriage, and the census really helps you stay on track. Of course, you can't believe everything you find in the census,
right,
because I have a grandmother that never aged normally. She didn't age 10 years every census.
Well, and you mentioned in there that a lot of times it had to do with the memory of the person that the census taker was talking to. You know, oh, I think those kids are 6 when they could have been 10, or, you know.
Well, and it usually wasn't, or often it wasn't the parent giving the information. If the person wasn't at home, those poor census takers a lot of times were on horseback or on foot, traveling many miles, and if they got there and nobody was at home, they might ask the neighbor for this information, and the neighbor might not know. So, and then too, when you're reading the census, sometimes it's very hard to read, and one of the things I talked about in my book is what the census takers had to deal with before they had good ink.
And paper.
And paper. They wrote on almost anything, and sometimes their ink was thin, so it was really hard to read.
I appreciated that so much because, like you said, you know, sometimes the F's look like the D's. They were written in Old English, and the family name that I'm looking for starts with an L. So I would have to compare and contrast. Let's see, they make their D's like this and their S's like this, you know, to try to decipher. So there's so many things that really sparked me again, because you know, once you hit some brick walls, you have to kind of sit back and see what happens. But it's really
and
good.
Sometimes you just have to wait until that person is ready for you to find them, too.
That's what it is. Now it makes more sense. Well, this has been Carolyn Leonard, Carolyn B. Leonard. She has a website, right?
Right. www.carolynbleonard.com and also www.who'syourdaddybook.com. Be sure you put the book in there, because if you don't, you're going to get a porn site. And it's okay if you want to do that, just don't let your children watch.
Especially if you're looking for a genealogy site. So again, Carolyn Leonard, the book is called Who's Your Daddy? Carolyn B. Leonard. And we hope that you'll look for that at your local bookstore or your favorite library.
Or to get an autographed copy, just send an email to me, carolynleonard@me.com.
There you go. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, me too.